Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am Lucille Songhai, Assistant Director, Government and Community Relations here at New York City Transit. And I am joined this evening by my colleagues, Frank Anacaro, Senior Vice President of MTA Buses, Rick Hyduk, Manager, Bus Service Planning of Operations Planning for New York City Transit, Ryan Wilkerson, Transportation Planner, Operations Planning, New York City Transit, Lola Vieira Sullivan, Transportation Planner of Operations Planning for MTA Bus Company, and Chris Pangilinan, who's our Chief of Operations Planning. The Queens Bus Network redesign is a historic effort to bring new and improved transit service to New York's largest borough. We've worked iteratively over the last 5 years to develop and refine proposals that meet our riders' needs, modernize service, and improve operations for the MTA workforce. Tonight's program will focus on the final round of revisions to our proposals, which were published in the Proposed Final Plan Addendum in December 2024. First, we will give an overview presentation of the addendum, which reflects the months of community input the MTA received on the proposed final plan. Then, I will ask our panelists frequently asked questions that were submitted by you, our bus customers, and other external stakeholders. Throughout the program, you can use the Q&A function to submit a question to our team. Questions may be answered by the panel or in writing using the Q&A function. Additionally, we will publish those same answers in our FAQs to the project website after obtaining an affirmative vote from the MTA board. Now, I would like to turn the floor over to Frank Anacaro, Senior Vice President of MTA Buses.
Thank you, Lucille, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Frank Anacaro, Senior Vice President of Buses. From the beginning, it has been our goal to deliver Queens residents with a bus network that responds to their needs. We'd like to point out that some of our bus routes still follow old trolley lines. Queens has changed quite a bit since those days, and communities change over decades, so do commuters' needs. After a 5-year process, we are ready to officially proceed with a new bus network for Queens. And we know what riders are looking for in their bus network: reliable service, faster travel, better connections, and simplified service. Since 2019, we have participated in nearly 250 events, collecting public feedback at every phase of the plan and using that input to refine our proposals. At every step of the plan, we have carefully considered and incorporated the feedback from our customers, elected officials, and stakeholders. During our outreach on the proposed final plan, the Queens Bus Network redesign has participated in over 70 engagements. The input we have received from bus riders, elected officials, community boards, civic associations, faith-based groups, nonprofits, labor partners, advocates, community institutions, and other stakeholders has literally built this plan. No other borough is as reliant or dependent on great bus service quite like Queens. Queens is home to the largest bus network out of the 5 boroughs with 800,000 daily riders. If it was its own bus network, it would rival Chicago for the 3rd largest bus system in this nation. You deserve a system that takes you where you want to go, not designed in the 1950s. Let's talk about what this plan has to offer. First, I'm thrilled that we can invest more than $30 million to improve service with new routes and increase frequency. This plan adds 17 new local routes. It brings better all-day frequency to every corner of the borough, and it will speed up trips for better bus stop spacing and more direct routes. And we've added 25 rush routes specifically designed to more quickly connect Queens residents to the rail system, subways, and Long Island Railroad. Game changer for people who have a 2-step commute. A few highlights. We're improving service to our airports. The new Q80 limited improved service to JFK, while the new Q90 will add service to LaGuardia. This makes it easier for travelers to get to their gate and for thousands of New Yorkers who work at our airports to make their daily commute. We are improving connectivity by making it easier for riders to get to and from subway and Long Island Railroad stops on the bus. Routes like the new Q98 between Myrtle and Wyckoff and downtown Flushing provide critical interborough connections. And we're improving accessibility by connecting riders to more ADA accessible subway stations on our 100% accessible bus fleet. I encourage everyone to visit our webpage to see how this proposed final plan benefits you. I want to say thank you to the entire staff who have worked for years to make this a reality and to get this redesign right. We're excited to present this to the MTA board and to provide better bus service to Queens for generations to come. Thank you, everyone. And now I'd like to turn over to Rick Hyduke to take us through this presentation.
Thank you, Frank. Good evening. Thank you for joining us for this presentation on Queens Bus Network Redesign Proposed Final Plan Addendum. My name is Rick Hyduke. I'm the project manager for the Queens Bus Network Redesign. I'm excited to give you a brief overview of the history of our project and to provide you with an update on where the project stands at this point. Now, why go through this effort to redesign the bus network? Well, for one, there has not been a substantial change to the Queens Bus Network for several decades. As a result of not making changes, buses have become less reliable, and riders have seen increased wait times. With over 800,000 daily riders on 113 existing routes, it was time to take a fresh look at how bus service was provided to these riders and whether improvements could be made to enhance their experience. Since the launch of the Queens Bus Network Redesign Project in April of 2019, the team of planners have conducted extensive data analysis and public outreach. The original draft plan was developed and then published using the analysis from the existing conditions report and from the public feedback from the initial outreach. After another round of public outreach following the release of the original draft plan, along with a long pause due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the original plan was withdrawn, and the new draft plan was developed and published in early 2022. And was followed by another slate of public outreach. Using all of the valuable feedback from this outreach, the team worked on developing the proposed final plan, which was published in December of 2023. The Queens Bus Network Redesign team conducted another round of public outreach after the publication of the proposed final plan, including holding a public hearing in July of 2024, and worked to develop an addendum to the proposed final plan based off this extensive feedback. We have now published the addendum to the proposed final plan, which will be followed by an MTA board vote in winter of 2025. 4 priorities were identified by riders at the start of this project. Riders want a more reliable bus service, where the bus arrives dependably and consistently. Riders want faster bus service, one with shorter travel times and on a network that operates on less congested streets. Riders want better connections, improving the connection to other transit lines, major destinations, and other boroughs. Riders want a simplified bus service, where the bus network is easy to understand and to use. To address the 4 priorities from our riders, we developed 7 strategies to redesign the bus network. We look to improve route designs by straightening routes, adding new route types, and reducing the number of variants. We look to enhance connectivity by creating a stronger grid with new routes and improved interborough connections. We looked at improving frequencies to build a better all-day frequent network to rebalance service levels. We balanced bus stops, improving stop spacing to increase speed and reliability. Working with our partners in New York City DOT, we collaborated on expanding bus priority treatments across Queens. We focused improvements in areas with a greater need of transit to improve transit equity. And we looked to improve accessibility through better connections to ADA subway stations and focusing on accessibility at the bus stop level. As a part of the proposed final plan public outreach, we participated in 5 open houses, gave 22 stakeholder meetings, had 22 stakeholder meetings, conducted 18 pop-up events, and had 1 public hearing. By the end of outreach in July of 2024, we had received over 3,000 comments. Of all the comments, we received the most comments regarding the Q110, Q10, Q75, Q31, Q64, and Q65. As a result of all of this feedback, we adjusted the proposed final plan with this addendum. Many of the changes that were previously proposed in the proposed final plan remain, but the adjustments made in this addendum are a direct result of our engagement with the community. We have developed our proposed new network, which will have 124 total routes, including 94 local routes and 30 express routes. Now I will talk about some of the specific changes that we have made in this addendum. Of the 124 total proposed routes, we made changes or adjustments to routing, frequency, span, and route type or route number. I'd like to highlight that there are 36 major changes to routing, with 13 minor changes, 17 increases in frequency, with 29 routes having reallocated or decreased frequencies. These resources were shifted to account for new routes, updated routings, or due to ridership patterns. 8 routes will see increased service spans, and 17 new routes were created, which includes naming a variant or combining 2 different route types into a new route number. There have been 32 route type changes, including the creation of the new rush route type. Now, I'd like to highlight some of the major changes that are in this addendum. Let's start with the changes in South Ozone Park, where we received significant community feedback about the Q10 proposal in the proposed final plan. As a result of the concerns, we restored the Q10 local as the Q10 rush. This will pick up customers along 130th Street and then provide faster travel along Lefferts Boulevard for a quicker connection to the subway. We relabeled the Q10 Limited as the Q80 Limited, which will provide similar service to the Q10 Limited branch today. This maintains existing access to JFK Airport with increased service spans that will operate 24/7 on the new Q80. We also returned the Q9 and Q37 to the existing southern terminals. Okay, let's highlight some of the changes that are in the addendum in Astoria and Long Island City. Due to feedback from the residents of Roosevelt Island, we restored the Q102 to Roosevelt Island and provided more direct service to Queens Plaza. We have withdrawn the proposed Q105 that was proposed in the proposed final plan, which traveled along 31st Street and brought back the previously discontinued Q100 due to significant community feedback from residents in Northern Astoria. We also maintained the B62 extension into Astoria to provide stronger interborough connections that was proposed in the proposed final plan. The Q101 service to Hunters Point and Q103 realignment along 21st Street that were in the proposed final plan also remain as a part of this addendum. In Floral Park, we received significant concerns about the Q110 and Q86, and as a result, the addendum will have the Q110 use the existing Q36 terminal, and the Q86 will be extended further into Rosedale. There was significant feedback for route extensions in the Rockaways, and the Q22 will have a limited number of trips in peak direction serve Bayswater, and the Q52 SBS will be extended to Edgemere in this addendum. The Q113 has also been restored to provide service between Far Rockaway and Jamaica. In College Point, the addendum will swap the Q76 and Q20 ends to maintain 20th Avenue connections. We will maintain the Q65 and Q26 swap to improve operations and reliability that was proposed in the proposed final plan. Now let's highlight some of the proposed changes impacting QCC and Bayside. We realigned the Q75 to Jamaica and created a new route, the Q74, which will provide service between Forest Hills and QCC. The Q31 was realigned to serve Bell Boulevard from 48th Avenue to 23rd Avenue. There were also changes in the addendum impacting the airports. As previously discussed, there were requests to retain the connection from Rockaway Boulevard on the Q10. The addendum maintains the existing local Q10 connections to JFK and adds the new 24/7 Q80 Lefferts Boulevard Limited. The Q7 has a reversed turnaround at JFK Airport due to the redevelopment work. Other routings around JFK Airport are also subject to change due to this redevelopment work. There were operational challenges with the proposed final plan Q50 extension into LaGuardia Airport. So this addendum has withdrawn the Q50 extension and will maintain the existing terminal in Flushing for the Q50. The new Q90 will connect Flushing to LaGuardia's terminals B and C with a more direct routing. This will be like the existing Q48 service, but with a more streamlined service to the main terminals of B and C. There are some addendum changes to the express bus network as well. Due to interest in revising the Queens-bound QM11, the addendum has revised and improved the Queens-bound routing. There were requests to restore service at the southern end of the QM12 and QM42, so we have restored service along Metropolitan Avenue. Some changes will occur outside of Queens as a part of Queens bus network redesign. There will be stop-only changes in Brooklyn on the Q35, with the Q7 and Q112 having routing and stop changes occur in Brooklyn. The B57 and B62 will only see changes occur in Queens. Manhattan will see stop changes on the Q32 with routing and stop changes occurring on the Q101 and Q102. Changes to routes that travel through Nassau County will also happen as a part of this plan. So you can expect to see stop changes in Nassau County on the Q36 and Q114, with routing and stop changes happening on the Q5, Q85, Q87, Q89, and Q110. The Queens QM express bus routes changes will also occur as a part of this plan. All other changes to B routes in Queens and Q routes in Brooklyn will occur with Brooklyn bus network redesign. We will continue to provide outreach and information to the public as a part of all of our next steps. This will include updates to the website with additional resources, including the newly published equity evaluation that was just added to the website today. We will also add a trip planner tool in the future. We have briefed and will continue to brief stakeholders and elected officials about this plan. We will be taking this to the board in winter of 2025. If the board approves of the plan, we will implement this project in 2 phases as a part of the normal PIC process. To assist the public with the upcoming changes, we will have a large-scale marketing and public education campaign. This will include digital and print materials, more briefings to elected officials, community boards, and other stakeholders, pop-up events at key locations, and an extensive customer ambassador program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rick. We're now going to go into the questions that we have received over the last couple of weeks from external stakeholders. And we also will be reading questions from the FAQ or the questions that folks are submitting on the webinar chat. So please keep the questions coming. And also, as I'm looking through that chat, I'm seeing that our team is also answering folks in real time. So that will be continuing through the course of this informational town hall. So the first question I'm going to pose is to Frank Anacaro, and it's the biggest one that we hear a lot of the times from folks. When exactly will the Queens Bus Network redesign be implemented?
Thank you, Lucille. Well, I'm happy to report that if the MTA board approves the plan, it will be implemented in 2 phases, the first being this summer, followed by the second phase this fall. This gives the MTA and our partners at New York City DOT and the riding public time to learn about the new network and ensure that the transition to new service patterns is as seamless as possible on day one.
Thank you so much, Frank. Our next question is going to go over to Rick, and it's one that we hear at a lot of the meetings that we've been at. And it's what I'm also seeing in the chat, particularly around people's bus stops. And we know that folks feel very personal and feel very connected with their bus stops. So, in this plan, sort of what was our rationale around removing so many bus stops that people are familiar with? And take us through that process, Rick, of what went into our planning process around the keeping of bus stops, but also the elimination of certain bus stops.
Thank you, Lucille, for the question. Increasing bus stop spacing speeds up buses and improves reliability. Each stop removed saves about 20 seconds on the bus's travel time. And that's why bus stop balancing is a helpful tool as a part of redesigns. Since the new draft plan, the average stop spacing by route has decreased based on the public feedback and comments for flagging the critical stops and connections. We carefully analyze each stop before making a decision to keep or remove it. We consider aspects such as equity, ridership, land use, connections to other bus routes or subway lines. Bus stop spacing is a big portion of that as well. And as a part of this plan, 83% of the people would continue to use the same stop that they do today. And some folks will just have to find that their new stop is just a short walk away. Thank you, Lucille.
Thank you, Rick. The next question I'm going to give over to Chris from Operations Planning. And this obviously impacts people's wallets and the things that people care about the most, which is how much they're paying for service. So, will customers have to pay any kind of extra fare if their number of transfers for a bus increases because of the redesign?
Thanks, Lucille, and thank you for the question. No, so we will be ensuring that if there are additional transfers in anybody's commutes or travels throughout Queens or the city, that there will not be an additional charge for that transfer. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. The next question, I'm going to pose it over to Lola. How can a customer tell if their bus stop was removed from one of our bus routes? And explain a little bit about our route profile so that our customers can understand how to access and use the route profile best.
Hi. Yeah, you can find a full list of all the stops removed, maintained, or new stops or stops that we have added in our website. So Queens Bus Network redesign website, you go on review changes by route. If you want to go, let's say your route is the Q1, you're going to go to our route profile. Scroll down, Ryan, please. Review the Q1, in this case, the Q1 limited route profile. If you scroll here, you're going to see all the information about the route, why we maybe rerouted. We can see information about frequency, connections to other bus routes. You can see all the information about this specific route. And then if you scroll down a little bit more, Ryan, you're going to see a full list of all the stops that we have maintained or kept or removed. And there's also another way that you can look at it, which is our Remix platform that, Ryan, if you can share that as well. And we're going to be walking you through mostly Remix today on all of the questions that are related to routes. So if you take the Q1, click on the Q1, you're going to see all the stops there. If your stop's not there, it's because it has been removed. There's also some layers that you can toggle on and off to see, how the existing route was before the redesign, and some other information that if you scroll down, you can see it. So that's our Remix platform that we also use to collect feedback in the proposed final plan. Thank you, Lucia.
Thank you, Lola. One additional question for you, Lola, before we sort of dive into talking about specific bus routes. Can you talk to us a little bit about this equity report? I know that it was mentioned earlier that the equity report was released today. Can you talk about how equity was incorporated into the Queens Bus Network redesign from planning to now soon to be implementation?
Sure. Yeah, so the planning process has been formed by equity from the start of the project. Even before we released our first original draft plan, equity has been central to our work. So we have extensively studied demographic characteristics, including transit dependency, minority representation, income, access to opportunity, mobility needs. All of those were analyzed in the existing conditions report that you can still find on our website. Our approach to equity expands beyond the federal requirements of Title VI, and we analyze even a broader set of socioeconomic indicators on our equity report. So along with all this rigorous data analysis, we have also been out in communities. Like we heard here today, we had hundreds of outreach events talking to riders, particularly focusing on those communities that are far from the subway system. And also today, we have released this equity assessment that you can find on our website. This assessment includes a detailed equity score index that was developed using the MTA's expanded equity framework indicators. So this index assigned equity scores to geographies and facilitated an evaluation of the differences between the existing network and the proposed network. So if you go to our website, we're going to find all these numbers and this data, and it's a very friendly, user-friendly report.
Thank you, Lola. I'm now also going to turn the next question over to Chris, especially because the Central Business Tolling District has become such a popular new MTA initiative. We want to know how the Queens Bus Network redesign has considered congestion pricing through our planning.
Yeah, so when with the principles behind the whole planning project, we're looking at the Queens Bus Network, as we haven't been able to change it in quite some time. So to take advantage of the new travel patterns that have evolved in the city since the last time we've looked at this network. So with congestion pricing, of course, we will have potentially some new travel patterns, as well as new traffic patterns, and we'll be keeping an eye on how that evolves alongside as we implement the Queens Bus Network redesign, assuming MTA board approval this summer. And we are also looking at the ways that we have capacity on our bus system, not just in Queens, but throughout the city to accommodate any, of course, new riders, which we do have plenty of capacity for them. So we'll continue to keep an eye on how things evolve over the next several weeks with congestion pricing, and we'll adjust as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We're now going to transition into talking about specific route questions that we've received. We're going to start with a popular route, which is the QM3. Can you tell us why the QM3 has been removed, and it's just some of the reasoning? We know that, particularly for certain folks in Northeast Queens, this is a route that they're very familiar with. Rick, can you talk a little bit about our decision making around the QM3 ridership and travel patterns and changes that we were seeing?
Sure, Lucille. The QM3 currently serves fewer than 70 riders per day in each direction. A vast majority of the commuters in this area are better served by the Long Island Railroad's Port Washington branch, which parallels the QM3. Stations in this area from Little Neck to Manhattan are eligible for discounted rail tickets through City Tickets, to the City Ticket Initiative. So we're proposing to discontinue the QM3 to reinvest that into a more robust local network that serves the areas of greatest need. The current QM3 riders who aren't interested in taking the Long Island Railroad can transfer to the Q12, Q13, and take the 7 train to downtown Flushing. You can go to the website to find more information about City Ticket, or just Google MTA City Ticket to find more information on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. The next route we're going to discuss is the Q20B, which again, for our College Point customers, we've heard a lot of feedback. So Ryan, can you talk to us about our decision to rename the Q20B service from College Point along 14th Avenue? We have a lot of riders that are concerned about getting to work, and they also use the 7 train daily. Can you talk a little bit about the new route that will be replacing the Q20B and how those customers that are used to the Q20B can now get accustomed to the Q76?
For sure, happy to talk a bit more about that. So we're proposing to extend the Q76 across 14th Avenue to replace existing Q20B service. Current Q20B ridership along 14th Avenue is significantly lower than both the Q20A, its counterpart to the south, as well as other bus routes across the borough. So we're expecting that the extension of the Q76 will have a number of benefits. It'll improve east-west connections for folks on 14th Avenue. It'll also extend the route to College Point, to the center of College Point, where it doesn't have access to today. And we're also, and this is a big one, we're adding weekend service for folks on 14th Avenue that don't have it today. So the Q76 is a weekend route. We do recognize, though, that for folks headed to Flushing, this means longer walks and added transfers, depending on where you live along the 14th Avenue corridor. So to that end, we're adding service to the Q25, where riders can transfer to at 127th Street. We're also adding the Q50 to the existing QM2, QM20 stops on the Whitestone Expressway Service Road, which will add an additional southbound travel option for folks that are looking to transfer to a southbound bus. And the Q50 has pretty solid frequency combined with the Q44. Bringing up the route right here, actually. So here's the Q76 that we're extending into College Point. And then here is the Q50, and here's our added Q50 stop right here on Whitestone Expressway and 14th Avenue. So while these riders will have a different service, they'll still have plenty of options to get to where they need to go.
Ryan, I'm going to ask if you can pull up on Remix for folks, because I just want to make sure folks have clarity at home, where the Q20B currently was serving customers, if it's possible, and then just being able to show folks specifically where the Q76 will be able to pick them up.
For sure, yeah. So I'm using one of our data layers here available on Remix. This is the publicly available mapping resource. So on Remix, you can toggle this layer for existing Queens bus routes. You can scroll down to your existing route, and then it'll provide this fun and interesting overlay. So this is the existing Q20B route. We're proposing to extend the Q76, which currently dives south here on Parsons and onto 20th Avenue. We're proposing to extend that instead along 14th Avenue to replace that service for folks. So there are a number of different southbound bus transfer options available, including the Q26 over here that we're extending on the path of the Q65. We'll also have a transfer option to the improved, more frequent Q25 right here on 127th Street. And then, of course, the most frequent route, or one of the most frequent routes in the city, the Q44 is available on Parsons, in addition to the Q50, where we're adding that stop on Whitestone Expressway Service Road.
And repeat one more time, we're now going to have weekend service?
Correct, yes. So today, customers and riders along 14th Avenue don't have weekend service on the Q20B, but because the Q76 already has weekend service, these riders will now benefit from that.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the explanation and the show and tell. Our next question is going to be about the Q23. We've heard a lot of feedback from CB6 and other electeds in the Forest Hills neighborhood, particularly about the rerouting of the Q23 away from Austin Street. We know that there are a lot of businesses on Austin Street, but there's also a lot of congestion around Austin Street. So Ryan, can you talk to us a little bit around our decision making around why we've removed the Q23 from Austin Street, and how, with the new routing that we have, how do we think that reliability will improve for bus customers?
For sure. So this is a big change that we're proposing to the Q23. So today the Q23 runs down Austin Street in Forest Hills. It's an extremely congested corridor, as anyone's taken the bus in this area is aware of. So we're proposing to reroute the Q23 off of Austin Street and onto Yellowstone Boulevard and Queens Boulevard to avoid a bit of that congestion that we see today. So this is a routing that people might be familiar with today. It's the detour routing that the Q23 does during events at Forest Hill Stadium. And so I'll note here, we have the map up. Access to Austin Street with this proposal and this routing would instead be provided by a stop pair near the Trader Joe's on Yellowstone Boulevard. And we're really, we're aware that this is a big adjustment for folks and we'll be continuing to monitor this change quite closely. But we do believe that it will help the speed and the reliability of the Q23, which is a really important north-south connection for communities in Forest Hills and Corona. East Elmhurst provides a lot of important connections.
Thank you, Ryan. My next question is going to be for Lola. We've heard a lot about the bus service on Merrick Boulevard, but also, specifically the Q5 and Q85 service to Green Acres Mall. Can you walk us through the changes on those two particular routes, the Q5 and Q85, and talk about sort of the importance of getting bus customers to the Green Acres Mall?
Sure. Yeah, so the Q5 and the Q85 today, they run in many different patterns. The Q5 has three different patterns, one that ends where the proposed route that you were seeing on the screen now, that's one of the patterns. The other one goes to Green Acres. The other one just finishes on the Long Island Railroad. The Q85 also has different patterns, one that terminates on Rochdale, one that goes to Green Acres, another one goes to Rosedale. So as part of the redesign, one of the objectives was to simplify the network, and we wanted to give one label for each one of these different destinations, so the customer doesn't need to keep paying attention to, the destination sign on the bus, that sometimes it keeps scrolling and scrolling, and if you know it's the Q5, you know where it's going to go. So the Q5 will be the main route on Merrick Boulevard. It's going to have better service than it has today, better frequency. And between all the Merrick Boulevard routes, which are now the Q5, we also have the Q4 on Merrick Boulevard. So Q4, Q5, Q84, Q85, Q86, Q87, and the Q89. So those are all the routes that are serving Merrick Boulevard. I know it's a lot, but each one of them are going to be going to one different destination. So the Q87 will be the Q5, the existing Q5 that goes to Rosedale. So if you want to go to Rosedale, you live along Merrick Boulevard, take the 87. You can also take the Q89, which also travels along Merrick Boulevard, but it goes through a different path, which is the exactly Q85, existing Q85 today that goes to Green Acres. So each one of this route will have one name and it's easier to understand. Now, on the weekends, the Q5 will run as existing today because we acknowledge that folks are going to Green Acres more on the weekends. So we're gonna be making the local stops on Q5, and all the trips on the Q5 will be going to Green Acres Mall. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you captured everything. What I do want to do though is see if maybe Ryan or Rick can talk a little bit about the rush route specifically, because that is very much a new concept for our bus customers, and I think really speaks to a lot of the changes, particularly for our bus customers that live furthest away from subways and from centers of economic opportunity. This is really a new concept for folks, and I think also, it's part of why there have been bus stop eliminations that people are familiar with. So maybe Rick or Ryan, can you talk a little bit about this new rush route that has been created and what our hopes are for this new route?
Well, I'll start there. The hopes for this new route type is to get people to the subway faster and to get people to their ultimate destination faster. The way the rush route operates is by picking up locally further away. So if you look at the remix screen here, you see local stop spacing much further away from downtown Jamaica and Manhattan itself. But once it hits that key corridor, in this case it would be Merrick Boulevard, it will skip stops, skip quite a few stops actually, to expedite service along Merrick Boulevard. This will kind of act like an express train, like the 4 train or the 5 train skips stops, along between 42nd Street and 125th Street to expedite service and travel to the Bronx. That's going to be very similar to how these rush routes will operate. And again, the goal of these is to get people that are furthest away from their final destination in Queens, faster access to that subway connection, faster access to downtown Jamaica's shopping centers and economic opportunities, but really to provide faster travel and more reliable service overall, so that they can get to work reliably. And yeah, Ryan, do you have anything to add?
If I can add something, anywhere that we have a rush route that is not stopping every stop, we're going to have a local route serving those local stops, so nobody will be missed.
I think that's actually very important to note. Can we actually, maybe can you show an example of that? So for a rush route, what would be an underlying local route that people that are used to taking that route that they can still take, particularly our seniors and folks with disabilities? If you want to choose one of your liking.
Sure, yeah. So I have the Union Turnpike corridor pulled up on Remix here. And this is a great example of one of our rush route proposals. So today on Union Turnpike, folks might be familiar with the existing Q46 service, which has a pretty extensive route. It goes all the way out to Glen Oaks and LIJ Hospital, provides really important connections, and a really essential connection to the E and the F train at Kew Gardens. So we're proposing for the permanent full-time service pattern for the Q46 and our new Q48, which represents the Glen Oaks variant of the existing Q46, to have this rush route pattern where stops east of 188th Street will be local stop spacing to pick people up along there. And then once it gets to 188th Street, those local stops will be picked up instead by a new route that we're calling the Q45, which will run south on 188th Street and then turn right on Union Turnpike and go to the subway. So this is an all-day frequent route from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 9 p.m., excuse me. And it'll provide a new connection for folks on 188th Street, new direct route to Kew Gardens and all that that area has to offer. So, Lucille, did I miss anything on that one?
No, I don't think you did, but I think again for our bus customers, and this is stuff that we'll be doing, especially as we are getting folks ready for implementation. Just because you see something may not be the same as what you're used to. We really have not tried to forget about our bus customers and what their needs are. So even with some of these new route types, such as the rush route, there still will be local underlying service for folks that do need to maybe stop at a stop that they're more familiar with, or even if they're just wanting to travel more locally. So I appreciate you clarifying that for our listeners. I'm going to jump over to Rick. We had a question about the Q100. Can you clarify about that bus route? Are we eliminating it, or is it being kept in our latest version of the plan?
Well, good news. We are not eliminating it. We have brought it back. In the proposed final plan, we had the Q105, which was going to run along 31st Street underneath the subway there and replace the Q100. But after we heard significant community feedback and there were operational challenges with that Q105, we decided to withdraw the Q105 and bring back the Q100. It is almost identical to what it is today, with just a couple extra stops up there on 20th Avenue in Steinway. So it is brought back and largely the same. So you can expect your commute to be similar.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Rick, I have 2 additional questions for you, Rick. So it's going to be the Rick show for a little bit. Why is the Q101 no longer going into Manhattan? And in particular, can the Q69 also be extended into Manhattan? We've received this question from a senior who said that it's very difficult for them to transfer to the train at Queens Plaza.
So the Q101 is being rerouted to the new development down there in Hunters Point along the waterfront. There's quite a bit of new high-rise buildings over there and more being developed over time. So we went ahead and rerouted it to the New York City ferry connection there and also giving bus service to an area that basically doesn't have much. It's kind of a long walk to get to the subway from Hunters Point over there. A majority of Q101 riders actually don't travel into Manhattan, so we wanted to increase speed and reliability for the roughly 80% of the customers that solely use the Q101 within Manhattan, within Queens. So we went ahead and took it off the Queensboro Bridge because the Queensboro Bridge is a known congestion point, and this will help increase reliability. As for the Q69 be extended into Manhattan, it would create the similar issue to what the Q101 deals with today, with congestion and unreliable service for those who are reliant on it, especially those up in northern Astoria and northern Jackson Heights up there that rely on that service to access the subway at Ditmars. Existing Q101 riders can access bus connections on Queens Boulevard. Right there at Queens Boulevard, right before the bridge, the Q32 and the Q60 will continue to be options for those who would prefer to take the bus over the Queensboro Bridge.
I'm also gonna jump in to note that we've improved the accessible connection to the subway at Queens Plaza. You know, I don't mean to speak for everyone that might be a possibility for them, but the elevators at Queens Plaza are located right over here, so they'll have a pretty easy connection from the new Q101 to an accessible subway station.
Thank you. And then Rick, for the final question that I have for you, at least for the time being, is about the Q102 Roosevelt Island Loop on East Main Street. We have heard from our community partners at Cornell Tech about that being a hardship as we are eliminating that stop on the East Main Street loop. Can you talk a little bit about the routing on Roosevelt Island and some of the decisions that had to be made?
Sure. Let me just start out by saying we did listen to significant feedback from the residents of Roosevelt Island. Initially, we had the Q102 being withdrawn from Roosevelt Island in the proposed final plan, but we went ahead and brought it back to Roosevelt Island and streamlined service to Queens Plaza so they have faster access to multiple subway stations, multiple ADA accessible subway stations. But as for the Q102 loop, ridership was quite low along that loop surrounding Cornell Tech, and people can still access Cornell Tech by that last stop. If they're heading into Roosevelt Island, they still have access to Cornell Tech pretty close to, right by the Roosevelt Island tram. And then those that are heading out and want to use the Q102, they can access the Q102 at the subway station there. So they still do have access to the Q102. It's just a bit further of a walk.
Thank you. Frank, this question is going to be for you. A very popular subject that we hear a lot at community meetings has to do with fare evasion on our bus routes. Can you talk to us specifically about what measures MTA Bus are taking to address fare evasion on our bus routes? And, you know, folks regularly see people boarding through the back doors without paying. So talk to us a little bit about what MTA is doing to address those issues.
Thank you, Lucille. Yeah, so yeah, fare evasion is a major issue. You know, as we said in the past, it's one of the biggest existential threats to the MTA, and we take it serious, and we're showing that, we're proving it. So beginning specifically in the third quarter of last year, we strategically redeployed and increased our Eagle team, and they are out across the system in force, targeting strategic locations across all boroughs, and we're starting to see some significant results and improvement in actually fare compliance. All right, and this is going to continue. And we're going to continue this trend because it's not fair to all of us that actually pay, and it's not fair that the system is at risk because of this. Additionally, regarding fair payment, it's also about our equipment. So we're doubling down on the reliability for our fare collection equipment. We're a greater concentration on real-time reports to see if our equipment is at risk or if our equipment's not pinging correctly, and in working order. And when it is not in working order, to repair it quickly. Well, we're re-educating our bus operators to reinforce processes for rear doors and our local bus service. Rear doors are for people who need to exit, not enter. Okay, and we're doubling down on that education. Our operators are doing a great job there, and we're not automatically authorizing the rear doors for people to get on. It's people need to get off. People are to pay from in the front, and that's what we're enforcing. And I think finally too, it's generally just changing the narrative, making it, socially not acceptable to not pay your fare. You don't walk into you wouldn't walk into Starbucks, order a coffee and just walk out. Well, it's not a right to not pay your fare in a bus. We launched an Move New York campaign recently, and just to introduce folks to, who our everyday employees are, and how they are part of the fabric of the community. And really take a look. I would encourage people to take a look at that campaign, and really, we have a moral obligation to improve here. And I think, and then finally I'm going to say, we've been vocal about it. We can assume the responsibility to enforce fares, and actually hand out a significant number of violations. But the criminal justice system needs to take their part too. And we've seen some improvement there, and we're looking forward to making greater strides there. But it's a really great question, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frank. Let's see. Our next question is going to be for Lola. Can we talk about the Q110 bus route? Sort of one proposal, or the current proposal for the Q110 gives people a single seat bus ride to Jamaica for residents living near Hempstead Avenue. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on with the Q110? What our proposals will be for folks looking to go to Jamaica?
Sure. So yeah, one of the main objectives of the redesign is to speed up routes, streamline routes. So by reducing turns, we're going to make the route more reliable and faster. So the Q10 turns on Hempstead Avenue, but Jamaica Avenue is a big corridor, is an important corridor. So we are extending the route. We are realigning on Jamaica Avenue, and we are extending it to Floral Park. So that the eastern part of the Q110 will have better service today, along with the Q36 on that segment. For riders that live on Hempstead Avenue, which is where Ryan is showing there, we are going to have the new Q82, which will be replacing that segment for customers, and it's also going to Jamaica, but it's not connecting to Jamaica Center. It is connecting to the F train. It's going to it is connecting to the F train. If folks are trying to take the E train specifically, they can transfer from the F train to the E along the line wherever is more convenient for them. And depending on where they live, if they live a little bit closer to the Q10, they can also take the Q10, but we acknowledge that not everybody can walk long distances, but they have the Q82 and the Q2 there that they can take to Jamaica. And they are also rush routes, which if you are looking to get to the train, you're going to get there faster than if you take the Q10. I should also add that if you were making an extra transfer, like Chris mentioned before, you should not pay. Not in this case because it's a transfer to in the subway, but nobody should be paying for extra transfers.
Thank you, Lola. Our next question is going to be for Ryan, and this is from a customer that talks about using the Q38 to connect to Rego Park and the Middle Village M stop and the Woodhaven Boulevard R stop. So can you talk a little bit about the new Q38 service and how that customer would specifically connect to those destinations, which again would be Rego Park, Middle Village M stop, and the Woodhaven Boulevard R stop?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm really excited about our Q38 proposal. So today I just brought up the existing Q38 in this dashed line. Today the Q38 runs in this kind of irregular loop pattern, ending in a similar location up here in Corona, Rego Park, Forest Hills area. Um, so we're proposing to split the Q38 into two separate routes. The Q38 will remain on its southern half right here. I'll turn off this layer actually, just for clarity. So this is what the new Q38 will look like, operating only between Maspeth and Rego Park. And then we're proposing for the Elliott Avenue service to be replaced by a new Q14, which will provide some new connections for folks between East Elmhurst and Ridgewood. In terms of the subway connections, um, the existing subway connections that folks on today's Q38 will remain. So if you're on the Elliott Avenue portion of the Q38, your connections at Woodhaven Boulevard on Queens Boulevard will remain, and you'll have a different connection to the southern M train at Forest Avenue. If you are on the southern half of the Q38, your connection at Middle Village Metropolitan Avenue will remain on the M train, and you'll have a different connection at Queens Boulevard to the same subway services. I believe this is at 63rd Drive in Rego Park. So those subway connections that exist on today's Q38 will remain, just in a slightly different form. However, if you are trying to make this loop, which we know there's a handful of folks that do, you will have to transfer between the Q38 and the Q14. So while that is a change for folks to adjust to, I think that the new connections provided by the Q14 are really exciting and important for folks trying to get between these two neighborhoods, and also should improve the reliability of bus service along these key corridors.
Thank you, Ryan. The next question is going to be for Lola. We have gotten questions about the Q4 and Q84, so similar to the Q5 question that we had. Can you talk a little bit about what is changing on the Q4 and the Q84?
Sure. Yeah, differently from the Q5 and 80 and 85, they don't have many different patterns. So we have no routing changes to the Q4 and the Q84. They also serve Merrick Boulevard. They're also becoming rush routes. So they're gonna run local along the segments that are not Merrick Boulevard, and once it gets in Merrick Boulevard, it's gonna rush through and get to the subway faster. So if you were trying to go from the local portion to somewhere along Merrick Boulevard that does not have a stop, you would have to walk, or you could transfer to the Q5 that has a good frequency. But regards of routing, no changes to Q4 and Q84.
Thank you. We're going to now, Lola, I have a couple more questions for you. Can you talk about the Q65 operating to College Point? Can you talk just about what changes we're proposing with the Q65? It says that there are a lot of folks that want to connect to downtown Flushing. So can you just talk about what the changes we're proposing with the Q65 and how those customers can still get to downtown Flushing?
Yeah, so the Q65 today, it runs between Jamaican and College Point, but we have identified two main travel patterns, that is between Jamaican and Flushing and Jamaican and College Point. So most folks taking this route are either going from Jamaica to Flushing or between Flushing and College Point. I just said that. So what we're doing with the Q65 is we're shortening it to Flushing. So we are going to improve reliability on the route because it's not such, a long route. And we're also extending the Q26 to College Point. So you have two options there. You could transfer from the Q65 to the Q26 that with the redesign, we'll have better frequency and also overnight service. And we also have the Q25 that travels between, it's a different routing, but it travels between Jamaica and College Point, and you will have better frequency than they have today. I think I covered. Yeah. Any further questions?
So I have a different route question for you now, and it's about the Q26 bus route from Fresh Meadows to Flushing. Can you talk a little bit about that route, any changes that are happening, and things that folks need to be aware of?
Yeah, that's a good segue to this route. So the Q26 today only runs during the peak hours, and it runs between Fresh Meadows and Flushing. We are extending the route to College Point, as I said before, and we are also significantly increasing frequency on that route, and we will also have overnight frequency. So for customers taking this route, it's going to be significantly better. They're going to go to the same place. There's a small realignment in Flushing, as Ryan is showing, but it's still connecting to the 7 train and maintaining these important connections.
Thank you, Lola. Oh, and then one additional question. Can we talk about bus service in Oakland Gardens? So that would be for the Q27. Can you talk about that bus route? Any changes that customers can look forward to?
Sure. Yeah, the 27 is remaining largely the same, besides two facts. One, it's turning into a rush route, so it's going to be rushing through. Ryan, if you can zoom in a little bit so we can see the local segment. Yeah, it's going to be rushing through that segment of, I just blanked on, yeah, it's the 3 different corridors. So that's one of the changes, and we're also realigning the route so it's a little bit more straight and it reduces turn. So instead of serving, Ryan, if you can turn the existing one so we can see, instead of serving Hollis and Casina, we are going to be extending it on Parsons. And if folks wants to go to Casina, they can take the Q25. It should also be a short walk from Hollis if that's where they're going. These are the changes, very small changes.
And I'm assuming that those changes were made to speed up the bus and reliability in downtown Flushing, which everyone knows can get very, very congested with buses and cars.
Exactly. Reducing turns, it's one of the things on the redesign that we took very seriously, because especially in a neighborhood like Flushing, if you were just going straight, it's going to be faster, it's going to be more reliable.
Excellent. Thank you. Frank, I have a question more so about customer experiences on the bus. So this customer talks about they've experienced bus drivers pulling away from a bus stop despite clearly seeing the customer at the bus stop either waving or knocking on the door, hoping that they might briefly pause to allow them to board. The customer has found that the operator usually does not let them on. And so can you just talk a little bit about sort of the training that we do with our bus operators in terms of customer sort of delivery, and just talk a little bit about kind of sort of the experiences that the operators have, but also what we obviously hear from our customers.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the question, and I'm sorry for this customer experience, but definitely there is some, valid reasons that they're experiencing this. So, the primary goal for our training for a bus operator is to provide reliable, safe service to the public. And components of that, number one is safety, number two is schedule. And most likely what you're experiencing there is, operators, number one, they're trained to service bus stops properly when feasible. We want to serve our customers at stops where it's the safest for folks, right? And then additionally, bus operators need to adhere to schedules, right? The schedule is a important ingredient to reliable service, right? We want to provide service within our proper headway so customers could get the service that they're expecting at the times they're expecting that. And that's precisely what you're experiencing, right? Although you may think the operator sees you and the operator, you in earnest run up to the stop and try to stop the bus. Number one, they don't want to stop the bus if it's unsafe with the passenger. Number two, they need to be very diligent on re-entering traffic when they're re-entering traffic to make it the most safest approach for the bus and for the passenger. And then number three, really to maintain that schedule and try to get passengers their journey, adhere to their customer journey time. And, knowing that if they're adhering, their follower adhering, and then that next bus will be there. So, I know sometimes it seems like it's just a moment, but, we want to make it the safest, most reliable and predictable service.
Thank you so much, Frank. The next question is going to be for Ryan. What is being done to improve the reliability of the Q8 and Q41 bus routes? The customer talks about that in the evening hours, they regularly experience overcrowded buses and long wait times on Sutphin Boulevard. So can you talk a little bit about what is changing with both the Q8 and Q41 bus routes?
For sure, yeah. So the Q8, I'll start out with. As far as improving the reliability, we're proposing to consolidate a number of stops on the Q8, which we're expecting will improve the reliability and speed up the bus a little bit. This is part of our conversion of the Q8 to a limited route. Additionally, we're adding some midday trips to the Q8, so it should have more frequent service during those midday hours from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. As far as routing goes, the Q8 doesn't have any changes. In terms of the Q41, which I'll switch to now, today's Q41 does a bit of a different pattern throughout South Richmond Hill and South Jamaica, which we are proposing to change. So the existing Q41 goes up here and then goes along Atlantic. We're proposing to reroute that via 109th Avenue in Lakewood. And we're proposing some additional stop consolidations along this route as well, which we're expecting will improve the speed and reliability of this bus. The other added benefit of this reroute is that it reduces the number of turns that the bus has to make and reduces the number of narrow streets that it's using. So those are just some of the changes and improvements that riders can expect on these two routes.
Thank you, Ryan. We appreciate that. Chris, this next question is for you. We've gotten a request from customers around making sort of more of a bus-only area, particularly on Sutphin Boulevard between Liberty Avenue and Hillside Avenue. They say that there are a lot of private cars and taxis that regularly block the bus. How do we work with our partners at DOT to make determinations of bus priority lanes and areas?
Sure, yeah, thank you for that question. Specifically on this segment here, we are aware of the issues, particularly on this segment of Sutphin Boulevard, and we have been working with our partners at New York City Department of Transportation to designate this an area for further study for bus priority, and we'll be working with New York City Department of Transportation on that, as well as other partners in government to enforce bus priority lanes, not just here, but all over the city through our automatic camera enforcement or ACE program, which will be using to make sure that our bus lanes are clear. And in general, we work with New York City DOT on a number of bus priority projects to make sure that areas where we have high ridership and high congestion, that we're working on those areas to add bus priority treatments to make sure the buses can flow as smooth as possible, whether that be in Queens or any of the other boroughs. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I want to now switch over Lola to talking about Rockaway bus service. In particular, there was a question about the Q35 being extended to Beach 102nd Street instead of Beach 108th Street, where there are two, well, actually, there's a large campus that's there. Can we talk about how we're making sure that students are connecting to school trips and to their school buildings?
Sure. Yeah, the Q35 was extended to Beach 108 for that connection to the ferry. It's a new connection on the route today. It is also a better handoff from the Q22 for customers traveling across the peninsula. If they want to transfer to the Q22, it is a better handoff where it ends today. For those schools that the customer is concerned about, I believe it's Scholars Academy and Beach Channel High School, we are still providing the school trips there. We call school trips those extra trips that we have during school hours. They are still on the Q22, they are on the Q35, and they are all the trips are serving, the same segment. So they are still going to be served by these routes.
Thank you. Can we also, since we're in the Rockaways, can we talk a little bit about the Q52 extension in the Rockaways and talk about those Bayswater trips that were added as part of the addendum?
Sure. Yeah, we have received many requests to extend the Q52 to many different areas of the Rockaways because the Rockaways is going through a lot of development. There is a lot of new affordable housing coming to the area, which is great. With the resources that we have right now, we were able to extend the route to Beach 51. Which is where Ryan's showing. There's a new development there that it's supposed to start this year, providing hundreds of affordable housing. So these folks are going to have closer access to the Q52 today, and we're gonna also keep an eye for when resources are available, so we can extend the route further. Because we do agree that a further extension would be better for the new folks coming to Rockaways and living in this area. For the Q22, we have, since the proposed final plan, we had an additional extension there to the Long Island Railroad. So folks, we have a better connection to Long Island Railroad. And as part of the addendum, we have added Bayswater strips, which is something that we have been hearing for a while. Back in 2006, we had those trips to Bayswater discontinued because of limited resources, and we have been hearing that they would like the trips back. So we're putting 2 trips a day. It's one in the morning, one in the afternoon, just like it was before on the route that was called Q22A. So the route is a little bit different than the Q22A because there was one route that would just shuffle between Far Rockaway and Bayswater, but now it's going to be part of the Q22. Is still traveling across the peninsula, but it is looping in Bayswater in front of the school that we have there, and then going to Long Island Railroad. It's one trip in the morning, one in the afternoon.
Thank you, Lola. The next route we're going to discuss is about the Q32. Rick, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the stops that were eliminated around Queensboro Plaza? This customer their question is, how can they connect to the subway without having to walk from Queens Plaza Station? So this is a customer taking the Q32.
So we are proposing to streamline the Q32 to avoid that awkward right and then quick left in order to streamline service and increase reliability. There's a lot of traffic in this area that causes significant delays on both the Q60 and Q32, but also other buses that currently operate on Queens Plaza North. Passengers on the Q32 can access the 7 train on Queens Boulevard. Like they can today. It'll be the same similar trip. They can also transfer to the take the Q66 to the NW in order to access the NW train if they don't want to ride that take that awkward location at Queens Plaza.
Thank you. Chris, this question is for you. Can you talk to us about how much money we are investing in the Queens Bus Network redesign and in Queens buses? And then, of course, why can't we invest a lot more money into that?
Yeah, thank you, Lucille, and thanks for the question. We're very happy that we'll be investing over $30 million a year into the Queens Bus Network, which is a great number of new services, as the team has talked about throughout the borough. This money allows us to do a number of great things, like the rush routes we've seen, additional frequency, some more new weekend service, and other improvements. So we're very happy about that. Very proud to do that. We do have limited, of course, number of amount of money that we can invest in any improvements, as well as a limited number of buses and operators. But we do believe that this really represents a very large investment in the borough, which very much deserves it, given given the size of the borough, the number of riders we already have, over 800,000 a day on the bus network. So it's really great, and we're excited to see this come to fruition later this year.
So, Chris, just to double check, you said 30 million annually, not just as a one-time payment, down payment?
That's correct. $30 million a year on the operating investment.
Thank you so much for that. Our next question is going to be around for Rick. Which Astoria 21 Street routes will connect to Queensboro Plaza or Queens Plaza subway stations for customers?
So it really hasn't changed very much, if at all. The Q66, the Q69, and the Q100 will still have access to Queens Plaza and um, uh, Queensboro Plaza. The only other addition to the 21st Street corridor will be that B62, which is an extension into Brooklyn. And that will go through Long Island City there and connect to other parts of accessible subway stations along its routing. But for Queens Plaza and Queensboro Plaza, it will still remain to be the Q66, Q69, and Q100. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Rick, can you talk a little bit for us about sort of some of the goals of redesign? So one of the big goals that, particularly with this project, has been increasing the interborough connection, particularly between Brooklyn and Queens. So can you talk about some of the challenges that we have seen with some of those sort of new routes and extensions that we originally sort of planned for or analyzed, and some of the challenges just in doing redesigns in different boroughs that have to have that interlocking and overlap, I should say.
Sure. So as I had mentioned, I'll start with the positive extension that Ryan had showed previously of the B62 extending into Astoria. That's going to provide a much needed north-south service on the key 21st Street bus priority corridor, connecting Hallett's Point all the way down to downtown Brooklyn and all the opportunities along the waterfront in Greenpoint and Williamsburg. But it is a challenge to operate and try to implement interborough changes in Brooklyn and in Queens at the same time. We have robust public feedback as a part of the Queens process, and Brooklyn residents deserve that same opportunity to provide feedback for their plan. So many of the changes that we had initially thought would be included in the Queens plan are being pushed to the Brooklyn plan so that Brooklyn residents can have as much opportunity to provide feedback on changes to their network and changes to how it connects to Queens as well. And there were just budgetary constraints and vehicle constraints as a part of this. Continuing to extend routes requires more buses, requires more resources, and it is a challenge. But I think a main portion and a main thing that I want to emphasize is the importance that the Queens team and the Queens redesign had by obtaining public input and public feedback, and Brooklyn residents deserve that same opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Can we talk a little bit, or I'm sorry, Rick. Ryan, actually, this question is for you. Can you talk about the Q18 route? There are a couple of questions that we got from customers around sort of original plans around streamlining it on 65th Place, and the reason why we weren't able to move forward with that. So can you talk about the Q18 route as it stands now, and then also talk about why we weren't able to have it go down 65th Place?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is a bit of a nuanced discussion with those interborough changes that Rick was just talking about. So with the Q18, you may have noticed that in the addendum, we're proposing to maintain this cutout that you see where it deviates off of 65th and onto 69th Street. We, in the proposed final plan, included a B57 extension up to Jackson Heights Roosevelt Avenue subway station. We're not proposing to move forward with and implement that B57 change with Queens redesign. So thus 69th Street still needs service, and that service will continue to be provided by the Q18. That being said, that doesn't mean that these changes are necessarily going away. If you were a fan of those, we've heard a lot about this change from both sides of the issue, and this will continue to be explored, and outreach will be continued to be conducted in these areas as part of the Brooklyn Bus Network redesign. So if you feel passionately about this issue, I'd really encourage you to get involved in that project and stay up to date on what's happening in the Brooklyn redesign, because we heard a lot of great things about the B57 extension, and we're really hoping that we can provide better interborough connections for folks on both the Queens and Brooklyn sides of the border.
Thank you, Ryan. The next question is for Rick. So we talked a little bit about Hunters Point, Long Island City, new connections that we were making for folks. Can we talk a little bit, or can you show or highlight one of the additional changes that we made for access to the waterfront and to Hunters Point in particular? This customer talks about the fact that Vernon Jackson is the closest train station for them to be able to access. It takes about 15 minutes for them to walk from where they live along the water. So can you talk, and I think just in general, can you talk to us a little bit about how we try to establish new bus services, particularly in areas that may not have it currently?
Sure. So as I had mentioned in the overview presentation, Hunters Point is a pretty rapidly developing part of Long Island City. A lot of new high rises and people living there. Um, as such, the service there is lacking because of the distance to the nearest subway station. So as a part of this redesign process, we looked at areas that may not have adequate service today and looked at how we can provide adequate service. So the Q101 that was previously going into Manhattan, of which roughly 80% of the riders remain in Queens, is now being extended to connect all northern Astoria all the way down to Hunters Point there. You'll have access to that 7 train that's nearby, but you'll also have access to Court Square, Queens Plaza, and other subway stations along its routing. And then the Q103 is also going to be extended into Hunters Point. This will provide access all the way along that Queens waterfront, connecting Queensbridge, Hunters Point, all the way along Vernon Boulevard to Hallett's Point. So you now have 2 bus options when previously you had none. But a lot of the reason and a lot of the rationale is because Hunters Point is developing and it needed service. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to shift to the Q31 route because we've heard a lot about the Q31. Can you talk a little bit about the Q31 in particular, where the new connections will be for the Q31, particularly for students trying to make it to Bayside High School. Also, we've gotten requests around rerouting the Q31 to serve Whitestone along 166 and Powell's Cove Boulevard to improve access to Long Island Railroad. So I think, and also folks have asked for us to improve the frequencies on the Q31 for especially during the off-peak and also peak hours. Can you talk a little bit about, Ryan, I'm punting this question to you, if you can talk a little bit about Q31 service and all the questions I just asked.
For sure, I'll try to cover everything. So the Q31, we're proposing to reroute and extend the Q31 up Bell Boulevard to the Bay Terrace Shopping Center, which will create some new north-south connections that we heard were really important in this area. The route will continue to serve Bayside High School just from Bell Boulevard, so it's a short walk away. And those school trips that exist today on the Q31 for Bayside High School, those will remain. So hopefully that answers some of the concerns about Bayside High School access. In terms of extending the route further north to, near our proposed Q61 and existing Q15 layover spot up here in Beechhurst, Whitestone, near Le Havre, the residential development up there. That's not part of this plan, and while there won't be a direct bus connection from Whitestone in that area to the Bell Boulevard corridor, these folks will still have access to the Long Island Railroad over here at Murray Hill on the Q15, or alternatively, they'll have our new Q61 service from Beechhurst to Flushing via Willets Point Boulevard, which will provide a subway connection and another Long Island Railroad connection in downtown Flushing. So if you're looking to avoid some of the congestion in Flushing and make that Long Island Railroad connection, I'd recommend Murray Hill as an alternative. As far as the frequency goes, the Q31 is indeed a lengthy route, and we're aware that that poses some challenges on its way from Bayside and Bay Terrace to Jamaica. Unfortunately, we're not proposing to increase the frequency of the Q31 in any significant way, but we are hoping that the direct routing, and we do expect that the direct routing and the fewer stops that we're proposing on the Q31 will improve the speed and reliability of the route. So that is about all I have to say. I think I covered most of that, but let me know if you.
I think you did good. Thank you. And just as a time check, we're at 7:55, so we have a couple of questions remaining, and then we're going to wrap up. We really appreciate everyone's question and feedback in our webinar chat this evening. And also, just as a reminder, even though we may not have gotten to your question, I know that our staff was very furiously putting in answers, but if we were unable to answer your question this evening, we will have that answer posted on our finalized FAQ, so that you'll be able to see a direct answer to your question. That will be up on our website, and that will be probably sometime next week that we'll have that up. But again, just wanting folks to know all of the questions that we've received tonight, both the ones that I'm reading off of this page, but then also the ones from our chat. Again, all of those questions will be answered. You will have an answer to your question. So just to follow up on a few remaining questions, can we talk a little bit about Lola, about the Q88? There was a question about us moving the Q88 off of Junction Boulevard. Can we talk a little bit about what that route's going to look like now, and some of the choices that we made around that?
Yeah, so today the Q88 turns from Horace Harding to 94, where Ryan's pointing on the screen. And on that corner there are a lot of illegally parked cars. It's very difficult to make that turn, and that impacts the reliability of the route. It's harder to get to the last stop. So we are proposing to turn on Junction Boulevard instead. We know that it is traffic heavy, but we believe that it's going to be better operationally, and it's going to improve reliability of the route if we avoid this difficult turn.
Thank you. Rick, this question is for you. This customer relies on the Q67 to connect from Middle Village to the subway. Can we talk about what is changing with the Q67, and what is the closest particular subway station that a customer could use for this route?
So the Q67 won't see very many changes as a part of this plan. A majority of the changes will be a reroute in Long Island City, right there where Ryan was pointing. Customers will have access to the Court Square subway station on the Q67, which has accessible access, connections to the G train, connections to the E train, and connections to the 7 train will remain. And you can connect via transfer from the 7 to the NW at Queensboro Plaza. And again, you have access to the G and the E still.
Thank you. Ryan, this question is for you. This is around the Q9 service, that it used to operate between Rockaway Boulevard and Linden Boulevard. Can you talk a little bit about what Q9 service will look like under our plan?
For sure, yeah. So we got a question about the historical Q9A service that was formerly around in Southeast Queens. Our proposal for the Q9 doesn't include the Q9A variant. It'll just be this rush route. We're proposing to change the Q9 into a rush route to speed up service for folks in South Ozone Park. But the Q9A via Linden Boulevard won't be restored as part of this plan. But I will take this opportunity to plug our new route in Southeast Queens, the Q51, which is a limited route that we're introducing along Linden Boulevard, which should help people make some east-west connections that aren't possible in any efficient manner today between the Rockaway Boulevard A train station and Springfield Boulevard in Cambria Heights. There are a lot of north-south bus connections that folks can make along Linden to take them to downtown Jamaica, as the Q9A used to. So we think that while the Q9A isn't coming back with our plan, we are still improving service significantly with the introduction of this new connection.
Thank you. We have 2 questions remaining. Ryan, this question is going to be for you. Can you walk us through the Q54 bus route and what will reliability look like in terms of improvement for customers? And in particular, the customer that asked this question about the Q54 talked about the fact that they live in one of the 2 fare zones. So talk a little bit about the Q54 and what we expect to see different as part of our plan.
For sure, yeah. So the Q54 is a pretty lengthy route, and it suffers because of that. There are some issues with reliability and speed along the route. That being said, it's a really important connection between Williamsburg and Jamaica, and there are a lot of people that are using the route to connect long distances. Um, we are proposing to improve the frequency in select time periods for the Q54, so those extra trips, should improve wait times for our riders. Additionally, we're proposing to consolidate a significant number of stops along the Q54, converting it to a more limited style service, and that should also help improve the speed and reliability of the route to help people get and make that, again, essential east-west connection across Queens and into Brooklyn.
Thank you. And for our last question tonight, it's going to be about the Q33. This question is for Rick. Can you talk a little bit about what changes are going to come with the Q33, particularly changing near LaGuardia Airport and using 81st Street now instead of 83rd Street? There's a lot of concern about traffic issues on 81st Street. So talk to us and walk us through our decision making around the Q33.
Sure. Well, I have some good news. The Q33 will actually remain on 83rd Street as a part of this plan. As it travels up to LaGuardia Airport, most of the changes you'll see are going to be where the swaps at the ends there, the terminals, are being swapped between the Q47 and the Q33. So this is to streamline service to Terminal A. This will expedite people's travels from Victor Moore Terminal over there in Jackson Heights to connect them faster to Terminal A than the existing Q47 does. That way, people aren't solely reliant on the Q70 and transferring at terminals B and C to either the M60 or some of the Port Authority buses to connect to Terminal A. The bus will remain on 83rd Street as a part of this plan, as you can see on this screen. The only changes that you'll really see are going to be the terminal swaps, and that will expedite service to Terminal A. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. That concludes the questions, our FAQs for this evening. Again, we really want to thank our customers for submitting a lot of these questions. We've gotten multiple questions about some of the same routes, so we really tried to consolidate some of the themes that we've heard this evening with some of the routes. I want to invite Chris and Frank to give any final thoughts to close us out.
Thank you, Lucille, and thank you to everybody who's listening right now and who's been a part of this project over the last several years. The comments we've received and the feedback that we have taken in has helped shape and make this project as best as possible. And without your input, this wouldn't have been possible. So really appreciate that. And thanks to the team here at MTA for working very hard on this project. This is going to be a generational improvement for the bus riders in Queens, and we couldn't be more proud to be part of it and to bring this to the community. So we're very excited to see this happen later this year. And thank you for joining us tonight. Frank?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And I want to echo that. I want to really thank the team, but also thank Queens, thank the communities, really, for making this plan better. We're very confident this is a very good plan. It's relevant to today's needs of Queens, and it doesn't end here. It's an iterative process. We're going to put as much work or even harder work into the implementation. We're going to continue to monitor it during the implementation and make adjustments as we need because we want to get this thing right. And, we intend to do that. So, we'll look forward to hearing from you. Look forward to seeing you out there. And you could count on the entire MTA is going to be out there making sure this thing is a success. And thanks again for all your input.
Again, I want to echo a very big thank you to Queens, our elected stakeholders, our community groups, our civic groups, community members, our bus riders, our bus operators and labor partners. We really could not have done any of this without you. Again, I want to remind people that the questions that were answered tonight, as well as any additional questions that we did not get to in the webinar chat, will be published to the project website after we obtain an affirmative vote from the MTA board. I want to remind folks of our project website. You can find information about everything Queens related at mta.info/project/Queens-bus-network redesign. Again, go to our project page, mta.info/project/Queens-bus-network redesign. We hope that folks have a safe and warm rest of their evening. Thank you so much. Good night.